Very good afternoon. Namaste. Please settle down. Here. A very good afternoon, and it's indeed a yes. My name is Deepalam Raju, and on behalf of PRL, I would like to welcome you all to this colloquium today, which would be given by Professor R.D. Deshpande. I would like to also welcome the audience who have joined us live on WebEx and YouTube platforms. This colloquium is also a part of the day-long symposium on emerging trends in hydrology research and Indian perspective. So there are a lot of colleagues who have joined from various parts of India here in this K.R. Ramanathan Auditorium. So I would like to welcome all of you here. It's indeed a great privilege, pleasure, honor, and to introduce today's speaker, a good friend and colleague, Professor R.D. Deshpande. Professor Deshpande is a very prominent personality in the field of isotope hydrology with an impressive academic and record and research profile. He holds a PhD degree from the MS University, Baroda, and he's a senior professor in the Geosciences Division and holds the position of Registrar and Chair PPEG, which is Program Planning and Evaluation Group at the PRL. His research focus is on applying stable and radioactive isotopes as tracers to study complex hydrogeological and hydrometeorological processes. Professor Deshpande is highly regarded in India and abroad for his contributions to the isotopic hydrology. His work is rooted in extensive and widespread field campaigns across India, where he has conducted detailed studies of hydrogeological framework and collected water samples for isotope analysis. He was the architect and PI of the very successful program called IWIN, that is the isotopic fingerprinting of waters in India. And in recognition of his expertise, Professor Deshpande has been appointed as mission expert in isotope hydrology by the International Atomic Energy Agency, IEA, Vienna. He's also a member of the National Institute of Hydrology Research Advisory Committee. He has served on several expert and advisory committees under India's Ministry of Water Resources, Ministry of Earth Sciences, and Department of Science and Technology. He's a fellow of Geological Society of India and the Gujarat Science Academy. He has contributed to the academic community by serving on various boards of studies at various research institutes and committees in various parts of and institutions in India. So with these few words of introduction, I invite Professor Deshpande to take us on the exciting journey of hydrology research in PRL and tell us what is there in the future. But before I invite Professor Deshpande to the stage, I request one of our senior alumni and colleague of PRL, Professor Harish Chandra, to felicitate him by a bouquet of flowers. So, Professor Deshpande, please give a big hand to Professor Deshpande as they come onto the dais.
So good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, let me express my great thanks for my dear colleagues and friends from PRL who have thought of organizing today's symposium on emerging trends of hydrology in hydrology. Because for a researcher, there can't be something more satisfying to see that how the hydrology research is going on, in which one has been a part in the system. So I thank, first of all, for organizing this symposium. And I thank so many friends of mine who have come from across the country, from their busy schedule. These days, if you organize some such one-day symposium, then it's very difficult to have colleagues coming because of the time constraints. So many colleagues have come. So I would not name them personally, but I would just tell them that all those with whom I was associated are present here. And I indeed feel very happy about it that all of you are here. So thank you very much for coming here. I'm going to tell you something about the journey which I had in PRL. I have spent 35 years and, to be precise, 7 months, 35 years and 7 months. So it's a long time to be spending in PRL. And I'll tell you how was the journey. And when I say how was the journey, it is not only my journey, but it is also the journey of PRL's contribution in hydrology research. This is what I intend to speak. Also, the way I have planned this presentation is not to actually tell you that what research I did. We all know everything is available and published, so it is not the occasion to show you my results, but to tell you that how the life unfolds, how the way one has to conduct when the situation unfolds, and how one has to go through, and what is the fun of being a researcher. So these things are plugged in this presentation right from my first day in PRL. And I would also like to convey some message to the young researchers, because I consider myself a researcher. The other designations keep on coming and going, but at the core, we are all, I mean, if you think you are a researcher, you are a researcher. Designation doesn't matter. So with this introduction, let me begin. There are several photographs. There are many photographs, so don't worry. I'll not bore you and keep it light. So let me tell you that why hydrology is so prominent in PRL, why it has been the seat of excellence in isotope application. And this is the origin that the isotope hydrology or the isotope applications in earth and planetary science came with Professor D. Lal to PRL way back in 1971. For seniors, all this is known, but many youngsters may not know what is the lineage. And I specifically want to tell you that why this is so, because in the country, wherever isotope applications in geoscience is concerned, they are all PRL products. Most of the places it is PRL products. So it is worth pondering that what is it that this has been a breeding ground for the isotope geochemists. So Professor Lal was there, who did his BSc MSc from BHU and migrated to TIFR in 1949. And he had the tutelage of Bernard Peters. His original name was Bernard Petrovsky, and he immigrated from the USA to India in 1951. Why he came to India, you must read in the Google. He's a Padma Shri awardee, and a foreigner getting Padma Shri award, there's a reason, so you please read why he got it. And he was the, student of Robert Oppenheimer. You know that who is he and how he has contributed. So this is what is the isotope lineage. That's how it came to PRL. And when Professor Lal came to PRL, with him, these senior colleagues came to PRL. Professor Krishnaswamy, Somaya Julu, Gopalan, Professor Bhandari, and Professor D.P. Agarwal. So this was the first batch of senior colleagues who came to PRL. And with these colleagues, the system evolved. But before that, some important photographs. This is the radiocarbon lab on the third floor, which he was instrumental. They are interacting here. And Jim Arnold and Masso, they are there. So very old photographs. And then this is the second batch of colleagues. You all perhaps remember their names. Many of you recognize Pant ji, Goswami ji, Singhvi, Bhattacharya, Gupta ji, Nizampurkar, Ramesh, Sareen ji. Sareen ji is here. In this photograph, Professor Sareen is here. I have attended coursework for several years because I used to fail many times. And there are many people here who will say Deshpande was in my batch because every time I used to fail and again he was there. So that's how it was. And Trivedi ji, Murthy ji, Kusumgar, and Kanchan. So this was second phase of colleagues who came. And their contribution led to this set of people, and many of them are here. So I have in this photograph put the photographs of those only who were directly connected with these people. Okay. Now these people have their own students and they are also here, but I have not kept their photographs. So these are all here. Shreyas is here, and Gyana is here, and Amjad and Arvind are here. And anyway, you all know Jyotis, Neeraj, Sanjeev. They were really looking very handsome. Well, of course, now also they look, but so this is how it was. And then along with this, there was another category of people, and they are this. I was also in this category. So to say, this technical category, technical cadre. So these are different people. So from this also people have graduated. So I have also graduated from this cadre of colleagues who contribute to system. In this, Ranga is, I saw him, Ranga is here. He is there. So Ranga is here. And some photographs I could not gather. So this was the time when I entered PRL. And when I came, he was my first boss, Professor D.P. Agarwal. So Professor D.P. Agarwal was the doyen of archaeology. I mean, you can't think of archaeology without him. So he was there. To his credit, 15 books and 250 papers. So I was, the first day I came and I had to work with him. Before that, something happened. When I came, he was not in the office. So I went to Nizampurkar. Nizampurkar, acha aa jao, aap. So then for 2 days I worked with him. Then somebody told me, this person is not for you, he is for DP. Well, ठीक है, आप जाइए तो अभी वहाँ पर. So that is how it happened. And then this was the first office. I was there, this was in the and I was scientific assistant. This was room number 262 in 1989. कुछ करना नहीं, खा पी के मस्त रहना वो, because it was like this. But there is a secret about this room. The room which was allotted to me, there is a secret, and the secret is here. That look at this room. It looks so many things. Power electronics there, AC room is there, and the late chamber is there, cylinders, and everything is there, curtain and all those things, nice table, chair. But the secret was there. So I did not realize that I was given a junkyard to sit. But I was very happy कि अच्छा room मिल गया है. So this is how my journey started. And in those days, the scientific goals were paleo-environmental studies based on analysis of Himalaya. These are the scientific questions. Don't bother about it. But my main role was a geologist because my basic training is in geology. So I had to look after the site selection, geological formation, deposition rate estimation, and these kind of things. But my role is to provide the geological inputs. So I visited many rare places, and that was really great. These are some of the lakes, because in those days we were coring in the high altitude lakes. So Himalayan lakes like Sariol Sar, Reval Sar, Bhrugu, Parasar, even some of the nondescript lakes, which are not very familiar locations, but I visited there, and it feels very serene in such places. So some spiritual kind of angle to the life, and this is what was the life like. We used to go in the boat with the corer, and this is how we used to work. And this was the lifestyle in 89. You can imagine that when you go to field, you have to stay this kind of dormitories and rooms, because this is what how the situation was in the field. You don't get hotel, and even if you get hotel, you don't have DA to pay. So in 95 rupees, whatever you can stay, you have to stay. So that is how the situation was. And this person is a postdoc, so don't have any misunderstanding. And these are some field photographs. I went there in the field situation, mingling with people, and this was some cave. Until this time, I was not scientist. I was an employee, because this question comes: can there be any animal in the cave? Because you do not know what is there. I mean, there can be anything. There can be wild cat or snake or whatever. So the best thing is not to tell that there is a cave, come back. But no, then still we tried, and so this is how the sprouting of interest in research happened. That yes, I'm interested to see what is there in the cave. And we visited many lakes, and this paper came, Lake Sediment from the Kashmir Himalayas, Inverted Carbon 14 Chronology and its Implications. There were many papers, but I did not have any academic contribution in that, so I am not mentioning this. Now, my initiation in hydrology happened in 1994, and this was the person, Dr. S.K. Gupta, my teacher, boss, and later on close friend. And my first dive into hydrology and forever was credited to him. And from him, I learned that study of water anywhere on earth and any process that relates to water is interesting. And that's how I am a hydrologist. This man had a very positive thing, and he had a virtuous courage to publicly acknowledge my contributions and ideas freely in scientific meetings. So although I was a scientific assistant, he would not mind telling that ये इसका इसने ये compute किया है, या इसने ये बोला, ये ऐसा बोल रहा है. So that kind of courage he had, and he boosted my morale. But then initially it was not the hydrology, it was geohydrology kind of thing or hydrology related thing. So these two important things, soil aquifer treatment, geopurification and Akshay Dhara. So this is the soil purification treatment which came from PRL, wherein the idea was that the primarily treated sewage water is to be put in this kind of tanks, and then let it infiltrate by geopurification, and then you pump the water and put that water back in the upstream of the Vasna Barrage, so that this river has got some water gets purified. And this was a successful experiment done with the 55 million liters per day geopurification. Unfortunately, it did not, come into the implementation. This could have been, implemented on a larger scale. It did not happen. But this is the field situation. This is drying and wetting phases of the ponds. Then Dr. Gupta also came this Akshay, he gave out the Akshay Dhara concept, this pristine perennial flow of water, wherein the idea is that you segregate the toilet and non-toilet wastewater and then renovate that water. So this idea also came, and in several societies in Ahmedabad, the Akshay Dhara concept was implemented. And in addition to that, drilling and coring for paleoclimatology was also done. So at that time, you can't differentiate whether you are a scientist or scientific assistant or labor, but that's how the life was, mainly participating in coring operations. This is another interesting thing, that there was one Dr. Sushma Prasad, and we had to go and stay in Nal Sarovar for coring. It was a 10 days program to stay in Nal Sarovar, but from some reason, Dr. Gupta could not come. So he said that, aap jao. Now it was a little difficult situation, only me and Sushma going for the coring. So I told my wife that you should come. So that's how she also came. And for 10 days, bunking the school of my son. And he had just got admission in the nursery. So this was the time. And from this study, this paper came by K. Pandarinath and the late quaternary sediments from Nal Sarovar. So we worked in Nal Sarovar. Now the real hydrology started. That this person was the PDF here, Dr. Dinanath Yadav, and he was planning to inject helium in the groundwater and see how groundwater is moving. But before that, Dr. P.S. Datta had already found out that there is some anomalous helium in the groundwater. And this project of injecting helium was not getting successful. That how to inject the helium in the aquifer? It's very difficult to inject gas in the aquifer system. So this was not happening. And then we thought that instead of injected helium, why can't we investigate natural helium? So we injected the natural, we sort of measuring the natural helium in the groundwater. And then for 5 years we did this, and it was a major program. But it started like this. It looks like archaeological tools because so primitive kind of thing. ये तो पिचकारी है. But this is what we used to suck and evacuate the the pipe and then measuring the helium. And these are the devices which we use for collecting the water samples in the purest form. The take-home message is this, that rich scientific ideas can succeed even with poor resources. So sometimes in your laboratory, if you are running short of some device, don't worry. You find out there'll be some way. This is the protocol for helium-4 measurements in air and water, which we designed. This was a part of my thesis also. And you can see that these are the lever lock syringes, the one which in those days in 1990 used for injecting the, fluids or some medicine. They were used, and lever locks. And think global, act global, local with available tools. Because technically for measuring helium, you need to have oxygen-free, high definition, high conductivity copper. In that you have to seal the water. But we did not have that thing, because if you want that, it will maybe take 1 or 2 years. But we started with this thing. Using this technique of measuring the helium, we had started measuring the helium in the groundwater. During that period, the earthquake tremors were felt in Bhavnagar. So I was already going in Bhavnagar. I had measured the helium in groundwater in Bhavnagar in September 2000 and January 2001. And then I was going to measure it again. But before that, the Bhuj earthquake occurred. So I, again went in March for sampling in the Bhavnagar. And the thing is freedom of spontaneous research, that something has happened and you start immediately and go research, do measurements. So now it is doing spontaneous research is also very important, because at that spur of movement you must go and sample. We had this paper, dissolved helium and TDS in groundwater. The conclusion from this paper is that you cannot blindly use helium as a precursor for the earthquake, because we found that the changes in the helium were not associated with the earthquake. So this is the CT which we I sampled and saw the anomalous helium, but they were not linked with the earthquake. We also measured the helium anomaly in Ahmedabad city, because 3 days after the earthquake, I was in Ahmedabad. We visited many apartments, including this Mansi Tower, but we did not have anomaly there. This is C14 dating in groundwaters. So these kind of gadgets are you can see that in those days, very simple gadgets, and the science has come even from those kind of very simple gadgets also. So this is 200 liters polythene bag, which we got manufactured from a person. And then we collect the groundwater sample for radiocarbon dating. So you add sodium hydroxide, increase its pH, so that most of the carbonate is in the carbonate form. Add barium sulfate, precipitate barium carbonate, and get to lab. So this is how we were doing. So you begin the experiment in this time, and after 5 to 6 hours, everything is decanted from here. You can see the water is coming out, and eventually sample is transferred in this bottle. So this was developed here in PRL. And then advantage of interacting with people. So Those of you who are from geosciences, they know that Dr. Joan Head contributed substantially in our radiocarbon lab. And the freedom of interaction and exchange of idea was tremendous. You can just talk to anybody, call anybody, meet anybody. Now, the major aspect about the regional aquifer system in Gujarat, what we did is that I will not go very technical. This, this is Mehsana, Ahmedabad, Ambaji, Tharat. So these towns, Godhra, Vadodara, Bhavnagar. So in this entire region, we have collected groundwater sample in entire region, wherever possible. Every season, every year, some 2 to 3 months, I used to be in the field collecting the groundwater sample of different depths. We had a structure of aquifers. For example, if you dig a bore well here, you will find this kind of things, some clay, then sand, some clay, sand, this kind of things will be there. And this is the water level decline. So we knew that this kind of water level decline was there. So we had lithologs. We measured the fluoride and electrical conductivity in this. And we came out with very strange observations which are contradictory to or contrary to understanding. What we were thinking that as you move from the recharge area to discharge area, its groundwater age should increase, its chemical content should increase, its fluoride, EC, etc. should increase because the water has stayed in contact with rock for a longer time. Very simple logic. But we found that that's not true. The higher values are found at certain places and they are not progressively increasing. So this was unexpected for us. We did the radiocarbon dating. So the radiocarbon dates to the Gujarat was provided by PRL. And then we know that the groundwater ages changes like this from less than 2,000 years to more than 35,000 years. And when the radiocarbon dating limit comes, you have to use helium accumulation method. So this is how the age was established. And the important implication of this is that when these things were published and when they were talked in the newspaper, the message reached that water we are using is several thousand years old and we need to value and refill it. So it was from that time onwards that the massive artificial groundwater recharge experiments started in Gujarat, and then it spread through the entire country. This paper came, Origin of Groundwater and Helium and Temperature Anomalies in Cambay region of Gujarat, wherein we tried to explain the anomalies in helium and anomalies in temperature, that some places temperature is very high, some places helium is very high. There is correspondence between the helium anomaly and temperature anomalies, but this was the contribution. I want to mention this paper because this paper has got the highest citation. In this paper, what we did is that we had the first order assessment of the available options to meet the water demand. And the conclusion of this paper is that the total volume of water which is proposed to be transferred through interbasin transfer is only about 175 billion cubic meter. So the context is that in those days we were telling that we must do interlinking of river. Now you can't blindly start doing interlinking of river because when you start migrating or transferring water from one basin to another basin, there will be ecological consequences. You can't just transfer the water and those consequences will be felt afterwards. So you should know beforehand that whether it is worthwhile to do this kind of interbasin transfer or not. So this paper gave some number and therefore it is very much cited. And someone in the lunch was telling me that how much water we can transfer. So you need to know that how much is the additional surface water storage potential and achievable groundwater storage and additional water available. So you need to have this idea. Then only you can start transferring the water. It's not randomly collecting one river with the another river. This paper came, this was the previous paper. Then we did a survey of helium in the Narmada River. So in fact, from the Dahej, which is somewhere here, up to the Amarkantak. So all these dots which you see, they are the sampling spots. So we visited, collected the groundwater sample, and then in those days, it's not a big facility. Only one person goes, and one field assistant. So only two people have to conduct the field work, come back, analyze the samples. So The important thing is that the time, effort, new scientific knowledge, number of publications, journal impact factor, and H index. So these are the things which we professionally are very conscious about. But at the same time, what is more important is the excitement of pursuing something, and what is the new knowledge which you are adding by doing whatever we are feeling happy about. Then as a researcher, we always ask that, are we adding something new to the current level of understanding, and which is, I believe, is very important. And that is what is the USP of PRL, that all of us are trained to address the fundamental scientific questions or push the frontiers of scientific knowledge. So the excitement in the work is always there, and then the excitement is of different types. So this is the some field story for you, that field situations are, I mean, many of you are geologists, many of you would have done field work, but in field, the life situations are actually like this, that you really don't get anything to eat. So this was the kind of situation. So you get your food made, ask someone to uh, prepare the food, and they'll prepare something, and then you have to eat. And this is the credibility, because initial, when you write first to collector will give you a nice room in the circuit house. But in the first visit, they realize that the mess we make out of the VIP room. So next day onward, whenever we apply, they say it is occupied. So you'll never get the place, because even in PRL guest house, if somebody makes, Richa will not give allocation to guest house. So this is how it is. But this is what the, you know, field campaign was necessary. This is how we were doing field campaign. Then you go to field, set up some laboratory somewhere, carry your helium leak detector, do measurements there, then go to another station, then another guest house, new set of samples, and that is how the data is generated. And after so much of trouble, some one paper will come out. So this is the, irony of field geologists and field hydrologists, and the way science progresses. Now, groundwater and surface waters of India, and all India field campaigns for isotope analysis. So then the one which I showed you earlier was for campaign for the helium analysis. At that time, stable isotope was not my prime focus. Then we got into the stable isotope, and it started like this. In 2003, we wrote this paper. This paper is based on this figure is as it is. It was there on the IAEA website, but there was no interpretation to this. So I and Gupta ji thought that let's try to interpret that, what does this graph tell. And then we have tried to interpret this. Basically, it is the delta 18O in different months in the rainwater in India. So we have interpreted this, and then we thought that, okay, it's superficial, but it is first order, or I would say zeroth order interpretation of the data. We published it, and then we found that to be able to do further, we must take up the extensive field work. So we started field campaigns, and then the first paper based on that field campaign came here, the distribution of oxygen and hydrogen isotopes in shallow groundwaters from southern India. And it is to be remembered that this one paper is not based on one region, one district. It is for entire southern half of the country. So maybe some 300, 400 locations we have gone, and then this has come. The important thing is here that in groundwater we found one signal. It was higher deuterium excess, and finding higher deuterium excess of the 14 value was not very comforting, because normally it is around 10 or so. So if higher DXS value is there in groundwater, it means there has to be higher source, and that means the rain also should have higher value of DXS. But in 2003, we did not have any control. Of course, later on, after 10 years, we have proved that why there is high deuterium excess in the rain. But here we had written, in this paper, we had written that this higher deuterium excess could be because of the rain of that kind of signature, which later on we proved after 10 years. Then we realized that we do not have sufficient data by our own field campaign. So what we did, that in the last 3 decades, whatever data from any laboratory in the country was available, we collated everything. And then based on that, we wrote this paper, Groundwater Isotopic Investigation in India, what has been learned. So it was collating all data, putting it together and arriving at the processes, that what does it tell about the processes. And this was the second paper of the All India field campaign, the groundwater delta IT known as Delta D from Central Indian Peninsula. Here also you can see that we had found out the east-west differences in the isotopic composition. And here also you can see the higher value of the deuterium excess. So since then we were thinking that the recycled component in the monsoon system must be substantial, so much substantial that it can leave its imprints in the groundwater. Okay. I'm not going into much details about these things because we have experts in different disciplines. So the purpose, as I told you, is not to discuss detailed hydrology. Now, I would like to tell this story also. It's a very interesting story. Uh, Tough target added for PhD. This is an interesting story if you are a researcher, but it can be a nightmare for a JRF. And what is it? It's like this. This was my PhD topic, groundwater in and around Cambay Basin, Gujarat, some geochemical and isotopic investigations. And this was the list of objectives. So I was very happy that to identify the regions of groundwater recharge and discharge, determine the direction and rate of groundwater movement, estimate the groundwater ages in the regional aquifer system, employing this carbon-14, helium, helium radon, etc., which I knew that we can do. We had a facility to be able to do that. It was available, so I can complete my PhD in maybe 3, 4, or 5 years, 6 years. I'll be able to complete. To identify the possible ionic and isotopic signatures of the past climate. So these 5 objectives were there, and things were very happy, goody. And then one fine day, Gupta ji comes in the morning and he says, I think we should have this objective in your thesis, to set up laboratory for analyzing dissolved chlorofluorocarbons. Now, setting up a laboratory itself is a very difficult thing. You can't set up the laboratory immediately. But at that time, it did not matter whether PhD is getting over in 5 years or 6 years. But we took this up, and Professor Krishnaswamy, I must tell that he said that yes, we must develop this method. So he helped me setting this up. He sent me to University of East Anglia. His Professor Peter Liz, he was then the vice president of ICSU, and he had the best laboratory in the world at that time. So he showed me around. I took some pictures and thought, okay, I'll build something here. And accordingly, in PRL, we built. This is completely, our own system, built with the all swage lock connectors and valves and everything Indian. Not Indian, I would say. These valves are from abroad, but less this wiring, plumbing. So this ready-made system was then available on order, but we built it. And the first, we also developed the protocols for sampling the groundwater, because the CFCs, the main problem is that it will get contaminated. So you have to be very careful in sampling it and then inject in the GC. So that purge and trap system we developed, there's a device here. It's not visible. Basically, it's a bulb through which we purge the dissolved CFCs and then transfer it into GC. Okay, this is the complete structure. So in those days, this was the strength of PRL, that PRL could develop the protocol, set up the system to analyze, and the system was geared that, okay, we have to develop this, and the investment of whatever, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, the system will do. But that's how the science was progressing. And this is the purge and trap system, which we developed. This is the first CFC signals in groundwaters. But then we did not continue with CFC analysis, because that entire system was supposed to be given to the funding organization. And by then we were thinking of formulating the IVIN program. It was already going on. So then the IVIN started. And this was the, dream figure which I prepared in maybe 2004 or 2005 in Coral Draw. So all geologists have to draw in coral. So we prepared this, and what all it tells that the ocean is the, if you begin the cycle doesn't have any origin, but if you consider this as an origin, that from ocean evaporation occurs, the clouds are formed, then the clouds move inland, and then they successively rain out, and every successive stage of rain out, the isotopic composition of the rainwater changes. It becomes progressively more and more depleted as the cloud moves away from the source region. So the cloud itself becomes isotopically depleted. The rain, resultant rain from this cloud also becomes isotopically depleted. And when the cloud parcel is moving, in between, some recycling will be there, something will mix, and the composition of this cloud will change. So all these things are conceptually known, and it took only 2 hours for me to draw this diagram, but it took 20 years of my life to fulfill what is there in this figure. So that's how science goes. So this is the inaugural photograph of IVIN program. And I would like to say that in the IVIN program, the instruments cost was borne by PRL. 1/3 cost of the instrument was borne by the PRL. And even after the funding of the DST stopped, PRL decided that we must support. This is a nationally relevant program, and that's how we have supported for several years. Yeah. Now, coming to, in the morning we were telling that how did we muster the support of so many institutions. So instead of requesting, convincing, first we thought that we must publish a paper. So we published this paper as a research article in the Current Science, and the title is The Need and Potential Applications of a Network for Monitoring of Isotopes in Water, wherein we pleaded that why such a network is needed in the country. So normally we write proposal, then we have a project, then we write the paper. So in this case, paper first, then proposal, and then the funding. So that's how was the sequence. So research article to scientifically convince what is required at national level is very important. And currently, Professor Jilani and other groups, we are trying for, Professor Sarin is also there. In the Indus Basin, such a massive program is unfolding, for which we have published 2 review articles stating the importance of this. Okay. Then again, you have to design your own instruments. You can't have commercially available rainwater samplers, because I have to provide to so many places in the country. So I need to have my own control of, gadgets which we are sending. So simple, this kind of container, our mineral water, and the funnel, and we have scientifically ensured that there is no evaporative loss. There is a possibility of the expansion, because this is, you collect water for 15 days continuously. So rain which will occur over a 15 days, let it accumulate. During those 15 days, water should not get evaporated. And also if the expansion occurs, this stuff should not come out. So every possible scientific aspects have been taken care of in designing this, and we designed it here and sent it across the country. This is the system for sampling the atmospheric water vapor. It's all built in PRL. And I would like to say that the cost at which we implemented this project was, I would say, less than 1/10 of that would have happened if it were somewhere else in any other country, because it's so low cost equipment. And we also had to take care of the system that we have the birds, and people should not take away, because that is also a factor you have to keep in mind, that people will just take away the funnel. So all those things also were kept in mind. And this is the lab setup of IVIN lab on 2nd floor. This is Maurya ji. Abhay was there, it was very important part. And Ram Matre, and this, the name. And his initial first 10 days of the lab, and his contribution was tremendous, because having come from the paleontology background, he helped. And this is the structure of IVIN program. Many of you have heard that IVIN was a big program, but in which way it was big? Because all the central agencies in our country who deal with the water, they were part of the IVIN program. Central Water Commission, Central Pollution Control Board, Central Groundwater Board, Central Research Institute for Dryland Agriculture, and the India Meteorology Department. So you know that, bringing them together, how difficult it is, but then it was done, so many people. And all the research institutes, wherever there was a possibility of isotope analysis, were also part of this system. So this was one of its kind program. And now I want to tell you about some people who taught me isotope systematics. So one was Gupta ji, I told you. Another person is Professor S.K. Bhattacharya. He is the master of mass spectrometry, a fine experimentalist, and of course a fine physicist. So I had a privilege of directly interacting with all these stalwarts, because our relationship was not that of a student and guide, it was a relationship of a employees, colleagues. So I learned, and in older days, you study like this: you open the filament, then you write down what is Y deflection and X deflection, and so it is a very traditional way of doing laboratory work. So now I do not know whether students will like to do this kind of way, but I want to tell you that such handwritten notes are far more important than the manuals provided by the company. It was always useful. My notes were more important than the manuals which you get, because such details will not be there in the manuals. This is another person, Professor R. Ramesh. He was also really a great scientist, and he was just opposite room where Sanjeev is sitting. And I had a good fortune of interacting with him. He taught me one thing, and it was this: his main teaching was think mathematically and describe quantitatively, because geologists, by training, they are more subjective. So he said that you must express mathematically. You can't say something subjectively, more or less or this much. You should give numbers, and that is what very great learning from him. Now I want to tell you something about how I solve some problems, and the young students may adopt this kind of thing of interacting with very senior people. And first thing is this. So Sanjeev, you have to tell me 5 minutes before the time is up, because please tell me, because there is nothing to be completed. So as things flow, I'll tell. When you tell me, I'll stop. So this, I want to tell you that there was an equation. I was trying to estimate the isotopic composition of atmospheric water vapor at some height. I was measuring the isotopic composition at ground level. So I want to estimate this. So to be able to estimate this, you have to use some equation, ready-made. So some equation was available, and this equation was available in the Sontag et al. 1983 paper. And the same equation was later on used by the Luis Araguas in his paper. So I just copied that equation itself, and then did not derive myself first. And then I was not getting proper numbers, so I tried to solve that equation. And when I found that the solution which I had, it was not matching with the published thing, because this term was extra in one of the papers, and in another paper these two terms were extra. Now what do? Because the papers are of very eminent personalities, you will not have an idea that there could be some typo there. So obviously you believe this. But now, instead of lying in confusion, I wrote this letter to Professor Rozansky and Luis Araguas, that I wrote that I'm not able to derive above equation. I would like to know how this equation is derived. This is what I wrote. And this handwritten thing, scanned and sent. So great people are really great. So he wrote that apologies, and there were some typos in this. So I corrected it, and then in my next paper, the corrected equations were there. So the story is that don't assume that something has been already published. Don't take it like this. Try to solve yourself. And if there is any difficulty, write to people, howsoever big or great he may be, just write, and people try to help you. I want to, later on I met Luis Araguas and Rozansky in International Atomic Energy Agency, and this is how the terms developed with him. I'll tell you another thing. This is the correspondence with Jean Josel, that the deuterium excess. So normally in the textbook and in some of the papers, it is written that the deuterium excess is invariant in the Rayleigh model. This is what is written. It's a textbook thing. Now, if you try to solve, you will find that actually it is varying. It is stepwise, the deuterium axis is varying. And if you set up the equation, you will also get this thing that it is changing. But how do you check it? So I wrote to Professor Josel that recently I was trying to compute what happens to d axis values. And in some papers and books, it is mentioned that d axis of rain is invariant with progressive rain out because rain is formed under the isotopic equilibrium. And in specific this, I tried to compute if there is any variation in d axis of vapor, and then it is found that d axis does not remain invariant. It varies. This what was it? So please explain to me why this is happening. And again, I never knew. I knew that he is a very big man, but I wrote him, and then he replied two-liner. I entirely agree with you. The axis is not invariant in Rayleigh model. So this is another learning that just try to check, get connected with people, and people reply. Now comes the some important publications which have come out from the IBM program. This was the hydrograph separation and precipitation source identification. So in this paper, which was led by Abhay, we say that the contribution of glacial ice melt, actually there could be snow as well, peaks during summer monsoon and reaches a maximum value of about 40% with an average of 32. Now, I'll not go into the details, but I'll tell you that we are so much biased by a major paper in some very reputed journal that we miss to really work out that whether this number is genuine, because in this 2011 there were some papers which were telling that the overall glacial melt contribution to Ganga river is about 10%. Now this 10% depends that on what scale you are talking. On a basin scale, it can be 10%, but when you go in the upper reaches, slowly the melt contribution will increase. So in this paper, we showed that it can vary, and it is much higher than that. And we showed that the glacial ice melt contribution can vary up to, this is the curve, so it can be up to 40%. Now, I'll tell you a next very interesting mystery, and that is the mystery of kinetic fractionation. So most of the isotope hydrologists are aware about the fractionation. So basically, when you condense the atmospheric water vapor, just put cold water in a Bisleri bottle, we know that the water condenses. So that water which condenses is the ambient water vapor. So the basic isotope systematic says that when you condense, the liquid form will be isotopically enriched because heavier isotopes will come in the liquid form, denser phase. So this is what was the assumption. But when we conducted this experiment, we found that our vapor is here, and the liquid which we condensed is actually isotopically depleted. So very strange kind of observation. Liquid which is isotopically depleted. And then we did not have answer that why this is happening. And this was a very important part of condensing the atmospheric water vapor, because in our country, we did not have vapor isotope data. The CRDS equipments came very late. In the recent 4 or 5 years, they have come. But, it was not there. And then we found that there is a difference between the theoretical and sampled values, and why these values are varying. So let me show you this. The experiment is the following. There is a cone. In this cone, we put ice. So once you put the ice, the cone becomes cold and the water starts condensing. So when you put ice, slowly the water vapor will condense, and then the water vapor will come in the liquid form, and we will sample it. So this is what was our experiment. In fact, this was a large scale sampling which was proposed across the country. And the logic was this: from gas to liquid phase, if it is in the equilibrium condition, the liquid condensate would be isotopically enriched. So if it is vapor is -11, it will be around 0 or 1. And if it is -71, it will be around 35 or so. So this is by equilibrium fractionation. But what we found is this: the vapor was -11 per mil and liquid was depleted. And then this was a mystery. What happens is like this: that whenever there is a condensing surface, the molecules move in this direction, and there is a supersaturated boundary layer, because if there is a supersaturation, then only condensation can happen, otherwise condensation will not happen. So the supersaturated boundary layer is there, and for the condensation, the isotopic molecular species have to cross this boundary layer and go up to the surface of this cone. So when they are going, their diffusive velocity comes into picture. So the diffusive velocity of this is more because its molecular weight is less. So it quickly diffuses, and then you can this is the reason why in the liquid condensate you had isotopically lighter component. Now this paper got stuck up for nearly 3 years. The reason was that in the published literature, the water in the ecological pool did not have any evidence of kinetic fractionation. It was assumed that the dew which is condensed, the dew drop, dew is under equilibrium, more or less equilibrium. So it was an equilibrium condition, and therefore nobody would believe that such a thing can happen. The paper got stuck up because I wanted the diffusivity values. I needed the diffusivity values at 0 degrees, and the diffusivity values were not available then because no experimental values were available. So I wrote to another great experimentalist, Boas Luz, that I do not have these values. And in fact, he also said that no, there are no values. And I wanted these diffusivity values. And he said that it is not there. And they have done up to 10 degrees centigrade, but they have not done the experiment at 0 degrees centigrade. And it requires some facility. So he said, I can't do experiment for you. And better you extrapolate. So I have used the extrapolated value. I use those extrapolated value, and finally this paper got published, kinetic fractionation of water isotopes during liquid condensation. So what it tells, 5 degree and 10 degree we did, but 0 degree we did not. But our experiment is at 0 degree. So that was the problem. So mystery solved, but accurate back calculation of isotopic composition of vapor from liquid was not possible. And the problem was that there was still a difference between the model condensate and experimental condensate. This was there even in the original paper of Josel. Then comes this person, Akash Ganguly. We have published this paper later on, in which we have come out with the concept that the saturation index is not enough. Actually, molecular density is more important. So this is what the case is, that this equation which is used by Josel, the equation which I have also used, we have used this term called saturation index. But later on when we computed, we found that the saturation index is not the correct parameter, because for the same value of saturation index, the actual number density is different. There can be different SI values. There can be different molecular densities at the same value of saturation index. And then now you may say that this is not a great science. This is, a 12th standard student also, if you compute, if you give him the equation of SI, and if you tell him to compute the molecular densities, he will come out with the same thing. But the fun is that it doesn't occur. It did not occur in 83 to Josel, it did not occur in 2013 to me, and then it occurred only after so many years. So from Josel in 84 to Deshpande in 13 and Ganguly in 22. So this mystery got solved. And the message is that fundamental understanding changes slowly. Need to have patience and perseverance. It doesn't happen overnight. And then the joy may not be great. I mean, it depends. What is the fun or the joy of learning some new things? It's a very simple joy of learning new things. And then comes Professor Jilani, learning isotope hydrometeorology of Kashmir from Jilani. He came here in PRL in 2013, and we had some discussions. I have also brought his application to the Dean PRL, and he worked here in the associateship, and we had a proposal, and that proposal has yielded so many papers, I think 15 papers. The points which we discussed something, it was dream at that time, but the dream has come true, and so many papers have come from Kashmir University under the leadership of Jilani ji. So that's really great learning for me. paper and paper and paper, several papers have really come out. And more importantly, there is an advancement in the science. More than number of paper, I mean, when we talk about paper, it looks like an accountant. But when you really think in terms of the scientific advancement, the important advancements have really been made. And as in the talk, Professor Jilani was mentioning that what new we have learned about the Kashmir Himalayas. The fact is that more can be seen than shown. When you feel the system, that what exactly is happening when you are standing in that terrain, what is exactly happening in that system. So as a researcher, you feel really very happy that I know that this is what is happening. This is isotopic studies of megacryometeors. This is one more interesting thing. I do not know if you have heard this word megacryometeor. You have heard the meteorite. This is a meteorite. This is megacryometeor. It's a ice chunk which falls from the sky suddenly. And this was not part of the IVIN program. But Abhay was instrumental in this. One day he came, sir, ये समझाओ ऐसे क्यों होता है? And I did not really know that ये क्यों होता है. So I said that, see, this is not our target. You continue with the IVIN project. Then again he came, लेकिन ये होता क्यों है? And then I thought, let me pursue this. We pursued this matter. It got published. But the thing is like this. You see, these are called megacryometeors. These are the ice chunks, and these are the broken pieces. The original chunk must be big, and they fall. They can even damage the rooftop, and these are the hailstones. So there is a difference between two. The hailstones everyone knows, but the megacryometeors are very different. And then we realized that on the day of fall, the arrow is the day of fall. On the day of fall, at 600 millibar pressure, the relative humidity peaks for some reason. We do not know why it is peaking, but these are the perturbations in the atmosphere, and such minor perturbations can also lead to formations of such ice chunk, and this could be an environmental hazard. The reason why this is happening is that for the system to reach a saturation level, you only need little bit of moisture to add. For example, at 600 millibar altitude, if you want to go from 40% relative humidity to 100% relative humidity, you need to add only 3 grams per meter cube of moisture to the system. So add a small amount of moisture and system gets saturated. Once it gets saturated, the ice chunk is formed and it will fall. So this is how the formation is. Then one more dimension to the work. She was a postdoc working me, and then I realized that we have to go beyond the confines of isotope applications. You just can't, keep on measuring the delta and then plotting the regression line. The science is far more beyond it. So for the first time, we did the backward wind trajectory. And to be very honest, I did not know anything about the atmospheric physics at that time, very superficial. And then this paper we published in the meteorological applications, because I thought that if I submit this paper in any isotope community, they are not the right forum. So we submitted it in the meteorological applications. This paper got published. Then these are the studies done by Harsh. So entire data set which was available, it was bifurcated into river water component, rainwater component, groundwater component, and from each component we have been able to derive the substantial scientific output. And this is the strength of data-driven science. If you have data, if you have evidence, you don't have to plead. Data itself speaks. And I will not go into the details of this, but I must tell you that because of the IVIN program, we have been able to make statements advancing the current level of understanding. What was thought earlier has changed. At least it has shifted towards different direction, and all is contributed by so many students here. This is Harsh. This is another contribution of Akash, and this is about the local recycling. Because in this paper we have told that in this region, in Jorhat region, there is a lot of local recycling. And actually, local recycling is, 45%. In certain seasons, it goes up to 60%. So this recycling has been an important topic which we are studying. One more work from IVIN program. All that I wanted to tell, that once the isotope data came, lot of advanced level of interpretations happened. This is one more thing, that submarine groundwater discharge, as on today we do not know where the water is going. Submarine groundwater discharge is that groundwater discharge which is getting lost. So if you ask any groundwater hydrologist, can you please tell me that how much water is getting lost today from the coastal stretch of India? You won't get a confirmatory answer because there is no answer. So some projects are going on. The NCS had a major program on submarine groundwater discharge. So some of these studies have important inferences about the groundwater. Last is the current work which Swagatika is pursuing, because we found that there is something related to meteorological changes. We think that the rainfall pattern is really changing in a different fashion, and I want to tell you that this is the paper in which I did not have even one paper to cite because I have not worked in this. So at the age of 59, writing a paper in which you don't have one paper to cite is a very strange kind of experience. But finally, these papers have come out, and this is what Swagatika has proved, that there is a north-south polarity, east-west polarity, and the years during which this has happened. So further studies will go on, as we were discussing in the symposium. Already there's a way ahead for pursuing for several years. And I will not go into these things. I will show some pictures of some people who have contributed to isotope hydrology. And because without thanking them, the isotope hydrology activities will not be over. So this is Dr. Gupta. This is his PhD guide, and he's Dr. Sukhija. So isotope community knows who they are, but just to, this is my tribute to them, that the way the isotope hydrology has advanced, and I must tell you that this is not the advancement of PRL's isotope hydrology. This is the advancement of the overall isotopic understanding of the hydrological system in the country, because all those who are studying this, they are part of this, and they are also present here. SM Rao, Nawada, Bishma Kumar, Abhay, Maurya ji, Rai Saab is there. We were in the IAEA for some meeting. Again, Professor Sukhija. They were all postdocs here, and then they went to NGRI, different places. And his Dr. Dipankar Saha, who could not come unfortunately because of this, but he is also hardcore researcher. So all these people are into same kind of mindset, studying hydrology. One person I must tell, he's an administrator, is Mohanty, Manoranjan Mohanty. He was the advisor in DST, but he's the one who understood that something is going sincerely, and he supported the IVIN program all through. So I must place on record. And all these are the people who have taught me. So whatever I have spoken, don't think that this is all I have done. This is always a collective thought process, many discussions, and finally it has come out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Deshpande ji, for taking us on a exciting journey from the past to present to the future, whatever possibilities are there, as was being discussed in the whole one-day symposium today. I'm sure there would be some questions. Probably we can take a few.
Okay. Yeah, if time permits, whichever way.
Yes.
You may identify Professor Rama.
His guru, but he didn't yeah, Professor Rama. SP Agarwal. Professor Rama. Yes, yes. Professor Rama.
He is the PhD guide of Dr. Gupta, Dr. S.K. Gupta from TIFR. So these are, see, this lineage is from TIFR, and he would say that he was sort of Dylan personality kind of thing. A very strange kind of people. He said, when you submit a paper, or they'll say, what is your initial? They'll say, I have no initial. My name is Rama. So one editor wrote his name as N.I. Rama, no initial Rama. People insisted, no, you have to give some initials. They said, no, my name is Rama only.
Yes, there's a question here.
Ram.
Thank you, sir, for the wonderful talk. It's always pleasure to hear you. I just have one question. It's more of a. I want your vision on something like you told how PRL and you in PRL have grown so far. How do you think the hydrology in the future should be progressing? As country, as isotope hydrologist, how should we progressing in the future?
Okay, so I'll tell you briefly. I had some slides, but I don't want to convert colloquium into seminar. There are certain things. First thing I told you about the submarine groundwater discharge. So my assessment, and many other people also agree to that, is that of the order of 150 billion cubic meter of water, groundwater is getting lost across the 7,500 kilometers of the coastal area. And this 150 billion cubic meter of water is very important. Those of you who are not hydrologists, I must tell you that 150 billion cubic meter of water, which if you can save from draining into ocean, so this 150 billion cubic meter is comparable to the total additional water which you will be able to utilize if you realize all interlinking of river projects. If you link everything, let's say hypothetically you imagine, so you will be able to generate about 170. So 150 and 170 is very close. But to get that 170, you will have to do so many canals, network, there will be litigations and all kinds of things will happen. But so this is an important thing. So one research topic is to find out where the submarine groundwater discharge is there. And there was a major program started by ANSYS. So I hope it revives once again. Second thing is the Himalayan cryosphere. So that we are already trying in a big way. We are trying to put forth that is important thing, only also for advancing the science as well as from the societal and strategic point of view. So we must have a large program on the Indus Basin. The second thing. Third thing is the vapor sources in different places. That what exactly are the vapor sources, particularly the bifurcation vis-a-vis source from the Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. The reason is that you know that the Bay of Bengal temperature plays an important role. It is for some reason that the cold water is not coming up because there is a stratified layer of water. So cold water is not coming up. It's a warm water. And that warmth is necessary for cyclones to occur. If cyclones are there, then the rain will be there. So that is another thing. And I think what Swagatika is doing is also a wonderful thing. I had spoken to Professor Mishra that we must try to find out that what are the reasons. And in a non-scientific term, if I say, Southwest monsoon is a very big system. It's a huge system. Why it is differentiating between southern India and northern India? So this is the question. There's no answer to it. But there has to be a reason. Because if the one system is there, there should be same rainfall everywhere, same drought everywhere, but it's not happening. So these are some points.
Yes, one question, Navinder.
Thank you, Deshpande. I have this technical question. So you showed this nice experiment of condensation. So the thing is that you gave the example, the explanation using this boundary layer. But another possibility is that you see the mean molecular velocity goes as inversely proportional to the square root of the mass of the molecule. So then your 18, the delta 18O, those molecules will have a lower RMS velocities and hence their strike rate will be lesser. So maybe that is why you are getting depleted condensed liquid, because the RMS value of the velocities is comparatively less as compared to delta O16. Okay. It's just a guess. I don't know whether it is one has to work out.
So the concept of strike rate would come into play when something is striking to a surface. But in case of the condensing systems, there is always an equilibrating phase, so that the boundary layer which I showed, in which molecule is going, it is colliding, it is getting converted into liquid form, but then it is not falling back. It is again getting evaporated. So that continuous evaporation, condensation, that equilibrium sustained. So in that case, whatever differences in the strike rate would be there would be there. But then they get, it is not very important thing. What is important is that at what velocity this fellow is coming, because the number density in that equilibrium region or the boundary region will depend on the diffusive velocity.
Okay, I think I think we will slowly, converge on this. It's been a wonderful talk and exciting, experiences, taking us from 1989 to 2024. And I'm sure several of the examples and anecdotes that he has put in his talk are greatly, very encouraging to students, to really to not get deterred and be bold to ask questions. So I think that was excellent thing that you have demonstrated, and then it's been a really learning experience to all of us. Thank you very much for this wonderful talk, and I would like to please give him a big hand.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for organizing this, and thank you for converting into colloquium so my other colleagues, because now I can say that I have administrative colleagues also with me. So they are also my close colleagues. So they are also there. So I thank you all for being present here and for everything that you have done. Thank you so much.
I would, yes. Just please stay on. At this point of time, I would like to thank our YouTube colleagues who have joined. So we'll sign off now. And for those of us who are here, I would like to first, invite Director Prasanil Bharadwaj